Could we have a round of applause for this guy's leadership and Jake's as well? Jake here somewhere. They did fantastic work last year and previous years on transportation. We're now enjoying that work. It is such a painful thing to know that 745 people did not get home safely last year, and that those numbers have increased the last couple of years. That knock on that door, that call to those families of someone who didn't get home from work or school is of unbelievable pain. And the good news is we have a team assembled behind me, and I believe in the state legislature this year that will take significant steps to reduce this carnage on our highways. We know we are capable of doing this. We know the things that work, and we are intent this year to make sure we do those things. And I think we've got a team assembled to actually get those jobs done. We know that the kind of things that our Traffic Safety Commission have done, we need to increase and make them more statewide. The first thing we need to do is to reduce the absolute tragedies multiple times caused by impaired drivers. At least half of the deaths on our roadways are caused by people who are impaired. And that is not acceptable to see those several hundred people lives snuffed out because people are not being responsible with their drinking and driving. So it is time to reduce the threshold to 0.05. We know this works. We know it's worked in Utah with, I think, almost a 20% reduction of fatalities. We know that this will change behavior. It's not intent to put more people in jail. It's an intent to make sure people don't cause loss of life on our highways and be a bit more responsible. And we are clear that people can live their lives, have enjoyment, enjoy each other's company, and still not kill people by being impaired. Now, this is something I feel very strongly about. I cut my teeth as a lawyer going after impaired drivers over Selah, Washington. Now, we've come quite a ways during those days. When I started at Selah, it was looked at as a recreational pursuit on Saturday. That never made sense to me. But now we need to go the next step so that we don't have 50% of fatalities caused by people who are impaired. And I appreciate everyone involved in the effort to get that job done. I appreciate Senator Padden's proposal that we have a look-back provision to extend from 10 to 15 years, which it certainly should, so that if you have multiple impaired driving convictions, we look at that for 15 years. That is only reasonable. We know we have to deal with work zone injuries to our state employees, to our troopers and others. We had 626 road work injuries last year. We lost 5 workers to crashes. So I appreciate Senator Lewis's bill to sponsor having cameras in our work zone. We owe these people safety when they're taking care of our safety. They're trying to get us home safe from work and school. We want to get them to come home safe from work. And I know when I pass people who are 6 inches from people going 67 miles of age, these are courageous people. And that courage needs to be honored by us. And Marco, I appreciate your leadership to get that done. We also need additional law enforcement personnel to do the work that's necessary to remind people to be safe. We need more police officers in multiple agencies. That's why I'm glad, and I think we will be successful, helping get more police officers on the road, well-trained officers, by having regional criminal justice training centers so we can get more people trained to have more safety enforcement on our roads. We're also doing some things in compensation for our state patrol and others so that we can continue to encourage and get more diverse people as well into our police forces. We need to know that we need to build safer highways. We need to build sidewalks and safer bike routes to school. I think of Michael Weilert, a 13-year-old boy who was killed on a busy street in an intersection that had the tendency to not be safe. And I'm glad that our move in ahead Washington includes $3.5 million to improve pedestrian signals at 9 locations in the street where Michael's life was taken. And I want to thank Jake and Marco and everybody's leadership in the Move On Washington, which has really put a focus on active transportation, giving our kids a safe way to get to school, giving people more routes to be safely in separated bike lanes to be able to ride their bikes and walk to work. This is great work. If we do these things, more people are going to get home safely. And that's a good legislative session when you get more Washingtonians to get home safely. I know we can get this job. Look forward to signing some great bills this year. Let's go get them. Thanks.
Thank you, Governor. You're going to need to put in a new order for pens to sign all the bills we're going to send you on this subject. I just want to make a few remarks to build on what the governor said. I think we all remember Labor Day 2020 when the town of Malden in eastern Washington was destroyed by a wildfire. We lose 3 Maldens a year on our highways. If you look at our smallest cities combined, I was doing the math, it's almost our 10 smallest cities and towns in Washington worth of Washingtonians that don't get home. So 745 is a number on a chart, and we've got it here. It's also why we have the Weilerts and others here to remember that these 745 people are parents and children, grandparents, brothers and sisters, workers, and we owe it to all of them to do better. And when you look at the chart, you'll see that just a few years ago, our fatality count was way lower. We're now at the highest since 1990. I think in 1990, there was a Representative Inslee in the State House, and there was a Marco Leas in 3rd grade. So things are a little bit different since 1990, and it's time to get back in the right direction on this. We know that this is a problem nationally, but we can't lay our blame there. Washington State, unfortunately, is leading the country in year-over-year increases in these fatalities. So while, yes, our roads across America need to be addressed, here in Washington, we've got a crisis that we can't ignore. And I'm just so thrilled and really wanted to make sure that we have bipartisan participation in this agenda. And we're going to hear from some of our colleagues in that regard. But this, Republicans and Democrats, independents, people from Eastern and Western Washington, rural, urban, all agree that people deserve to be safe, deserve to go home safely at the end of the day. I just want to, as Governor Inslee said, thank my partner in all of this work, the chair of the House Transportation Committee, Jake Five, for his partnership in building us better infrastructure, but also his rock-solid commitment to getting traffic safety legislation passed. I want to hand it over to Jake.
It's so wonderful to have such great support, and I appreciate both Senator King and Representative Barkas being here. We hope that all this work can be a bipartisan commitment to really making a difference for the citizens of the state of Washington. Appreciate your remarks, Governor, and your leadership on this. We had an opportunity out at PLU to have a good discussion with local folks there, and that was very, very moving. I appreciate you taking the time to spend with the families. There's a lot of work to be done. Every day that I drive, I see people doing crazy things on the freeway. And whether or not they're intoxicated or what their impairment might happen to be, I've noticed this particularly since the pandemic, and we really need to double down on our work. I want to point to a couple of bills. Representative Julia Reed, who is here, and from the 36th Legislative District, has a bill that's going to be really about more enforcement and reporting of for re-examination, trying to bring people in who've had problems in their driving, bringing them back in for a re-examination of their credentials to be able to warrant them to still have a driver's license. We have some updates, I think, to the Cooper-Jones Act. Cooper-Jones was another person that was a victim, and I just say that one of the things that's the most powerful thing for me is the opportunity to meet with the Weiler family who are here. David and Amber are here. I want to mention before I bring them forward, I came appropriately dressed. This was a gift from the Weiler family. I will be introducing a bill along with Representative Barkas. One of our shortcomings right now is the competition that we have for having good law enforcement. Our state troopers, even though we've increased their pay over several years, they're still struggling. We will be introducing a bill in terms of the number of people that they have on the road. Their numbers are down. The number of people applying to be cadets is down substantially, maybe a third of what it's been in the past. So we have a bill that will provide bonuses for recruitment of those cadets in the order of $10,000 per cadet, and for another $15,000 to recruit people in a lateral position who are ready to go. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to deploy those people once this bill passes to get people on targeted enforcement in problem areas. So I hope that we'll have a good series of bills that we're going to hear from other members. Representative Mena is going to be talking later. This accident occurred in her legislative district, and I appreciate her support in getting this work done. But if Amber and David would come forward, I think this is the most meaningful thing that you'll hear today is the voice of someone who has been tragically affected by our problems on our roadway.
Thank you for inviting me to speak today. My name is Amber Weilert, also known as Michael's mom. I'd like to thank Governor Inslee for allotting the $3.5 million into the governor's budget to fix Michael's crosswalks and the 8 other like it. Before my 13-year-old son Michael was killed riding his bike with a friend on a warm summer day in July, just 6 months ago, the notion of transportation was a means of A to B. But as I now know, transportation is a lot more involved than getting from one place to another. Safe transportation choices are created and guided by policymakers, engineers, and sometimes by a grieving mother who's lost her son. My son Michael was an avid bike rider. He got on his first bike at 3 and basically never got off of it. This reality is true for many young teens. When these youth get on their bikes and the wind brushes their face, they're breathing independence. These vulnerable groups are counting on us to do what is right, to do what is safe, and to put human life first and foremost. Michael will not get to benefit from the changes and improvements of the streets in our community. However, the people he loved will. I'm here to be Michael's voice, to support and make sure that this doesn't happen again. A death causes a tear in everything we knew about life. The ripple of sorrow carries through generations. It is impossible to comprehend how someone is here and then they're not. The dreams and hopes that were had for them are gone, taken in a literal instant. There's no do-overs. The pain lasts forever. It's permanent, irreversible. I can think over and over, replay in my mind the what ifs. What if I had given my son one last hug before he left that day? But we can't change the past. However, these legislators, and these new proposed safety laws can change the future. My son is gone, but we can save the life of another mother's child. I'm asked every day by Michael's friends and schoolmates what changes are happening. They say, I saw Michael on the news and my parents and I have driven by to leave flowers and remember him. Parents see Michael's ghost bike by the site of his death and use his story to remind themselves of how important road safety is and to give their children an extra hug that day. These choices that are being made here and now matter. They are truly life and death. Thank you for your compassion and to everyone making transportation safety the priority. Thank you.
Amber and David, we're so grateful for your courage to tell your story and your continued advocacy. And now I want to invite up two dear friends who are also with us on this mission, our Republican colleagues, the ranking members of the House and Senate Transportation Committee, Senator Curtis King from Yakima, Representative Andrew Barkas from Thurston County.
Thank you, Marco, and Governor, Representative Fye. Thank you for including us, and it's an honor to be here with my fellow legislators and all of the workers that are behind us. It's about all of us. It's about all of them and the job that they do and the peril that we at times put them in. I'm here because safety isn't a partisan issue. It's about all of us working together. When you look at the list of bills that are here, most of them may have a Democratic sponsor, but I can tell you there's numerous Republican names right behind it. This is the way we look at these issues. We have to address the issue. Senator Barkas, I elevated him, I'm sorry. Yeah, Senator Leas and I worked on the MSI task force this morning, USI task force on, and we came away with cameras in work zone safety. Now, I tell you, cameras are not something that Republicans normally like to talk about, but by God, we got to do something to protect those workers. And that's the conclusion we came to. When you listen to the stories, as we just heard, and the stories of our workers on site that need protection, we got to do everything we can to make sure they get home safe, that every citizen in the state of Washington has that opportunity to get home safe. That's why we're here today. That's why we're working with all of our legislators to craft these bills that are going to move us in that direction. And we need to do it sooner rather than later. So I very much appreciate the opportunity of being here today with you, and thank you for the invitation.
Good afternoon, Governor. Good to see you. Senator Leas, my great colleague, Chair Fye, and of course, Curtis King, Senator King. Andrew Barkas, and it's been an honor to be the ranking member on the Transportation Committee for the last several years. When you look at this room and you hear these stories and you hear about what we're going to do, we are truly better when we are together. And this is a bipartisan. Transportation has always been bipartisan. We truly work to find the solutions for the people of the state of Washington, and nothing can be more important to make sure that our roads and our citizens are safe every single day. I'm thrilled to hear about the bills and proposals that are coming up that we are going to consider, keeping our workers safe, the additional support for our great Washington State Patrol to increase the ranks of our troopers, because it's no secret there is a correlation with what we are seeing with the fact that we truly need more officers on our roads every day. And we're going to work to achieve that, not only through the education, but also the proposal that Chair Fye and I are working on, and of course, the Senate will be with us working on that too. There are so many different things when it comes to the things that we can approach when it is taking into consideration projects for biking, for walking, for hiking, for all the active pieces that we've learned about so much more in the last couple of years, to new technologies, whether it's lane striping in our rural areas in the dark of night to keep people on the road, to take advantage of the safety and technology that is ever present in the vehicles that we're driving. We should see a decrease, not an increase, on our roads in collisions and fatalities. We're committed to doing this. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. I'm excited to work with my colleagues, and I look forward to putting more bills on your desk, Governor, to protect the people of the state of Washington. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much, and we look forward to sending Republican and Democratic bills to the governor on this subject. We could not do this work without mobilizing the voices of Washingtonians, so we have two incredible leaders here from some of our advocacy organizations to make some brief remarks. Kelsey Mesher from the Transportation Choices Coalition and Lee Lambert from the Washington Bikes Organization to tell us how we're getting all our Washingtonians engaged in this important work.
Thank you, Senator Leas. I'm Lee Lambert, the Executive Director of Washington Bikes and Cascade Bicycle Club. And we're here to support this suite of legislations to build on the success of last year's Move Washington legislation that will make historic investments in improving the infrastructure of our roads. But we need policies to make those roads safer as well. When we make roads safer for users, we make them particularly safer for people who walk and bike. And so we're happy to have our partners in the legislature and the governor's office to ensure that people get home safe. Death is the ultimate price. But for those of us who walk and bike, all of us had close calls. And it's frightening. And that is a sign of a broken system. So as we move forward with these policies, we need to prioritize safety, not speed, and education over lenience. So we'd like to introduce my colleague here to share some words about our transportation funds.
Thank you, Lee. I'm Kelsey Mesher, and I'm the Deputy Director at Transportation Choices Coalition. Our transportation system is not safe. People from all communities across the state of Washington are being injured and killed at unacceptably high rates. And we cannot be numb or complacent to this. No one should be putting their life on the line because they're taking their dog for a walk or riding their bike in their neighborhood or trying to catch the bus. Transportation Choices is grateful to these legislators for this bipartisan effort, stepping up to improve road safety. We support these proven interventions that increase safety for all road users. These new policies will allow for increased education and serve as deterrents for dangerous behavior. This slate of bills is important to complement infrastructure, which we know is the #1 way to keep people safe. We also know that enforcement of road policies is often unfairly applied to low-income people and people of color. So it's important to state that the intention of these laws is not to jail or ticket users, but to create rigorous education campaigns and curb deadly driver behavior.
And finally, we do promise to take questions, but two last remarks. It's hard because there's so many great prime sponsors on these bills, but I wanted to ask two colleagues to share some remarks. Senator John Lovick, I call him Trooper Lovick, as well as Representative Charlotte Mena, who represents Michael and the Weilerts community to bring a community voice to this issue as well. Senator Lovick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I have to tell you this, that I am a trooper. I was told that once I retired from the State Patrol, you will always be a trooper. So I like to say that. You know, I have to tell you this, Amber, your story just touched me, and I want to tell you I'm so sorry for your loss. And it just really impacted me more than anything I've heard in a long time, because more than a few times in my 31 years as a state trooper, I had to go and knock on that door. And all of our troopers here will tell you there was nothing harder than doing that, particularly when some of the legislation I'm working on is to lower the BAC level. And I always like to tell people that drunk driving is a choice. You make the choice to drive drunk. And it should be embarrassing for all of us that we are losing one person every single day on our roads. By this time tomorrow, 2 people will be dead. That should be unacceptable to all of us. Drunk driving is a choice, and we need to take that choice away. So I'm very, very pleased that we are going to pass Senate Bill 5002 to lower the BAC level to 0.05, and we believe that it is going to make a difference, because my thought process with respect to road safety is you should not only be safe, you should always feel safe. And I have to tell you this, Governor, and I've said this many times, I personally, and I know a lot of other people do not feel safe driving on our roads right now. I personally think our roads are the most unsafe roads we have ever had. To lose 745 people, 745, if there was any other industry where we lost that many people, we would do something, and we are going to do something. So thank you for this wonderful evening. And Amber, I'm never going to forget what you said today. And I just want to say again, I'm so very, very sorry for your loss.
Hey, well, the price you pay for being the newest legislator is going last. I want to first and foremost thank Michael's mom and dad. It's not easy to speak up, and during a time of unimaginable loss, you've really taken that and turned it into activism, and that's really how change is made. We know that those closest to the pain need to be closest to the policy. And because that is the case here, we know that we're putting our best foot forward. When people step into their power and use their voices and organize, we can and we do achieve the change that we seek. And I'm here with you to do that. Michael's family and our community lost him in our own backyard on 134th and Pacific, just a half mile from his house. This intersection is just one of many in Parkland and around the district that is unsafe for bikers and pedestrians. Some of our neighborhoods in unincorporated Pierce County lack bike lanes and sidewalks. And I know because I walk on those streets to take my niece to the park. We have a system of infrastructure that prioritizes moving cars quickly over the safety of children biking to school and walking to the park. And this is especially concerning in the 29th district, where bus service lines are so infrequent that residents without a vehicle have to rely on biking and walking just to get around, whether they're going to work or the grocery store or to the doctor's office. Our district faces many barriers, but this definitely should not be one of them. We have to do better, and we need to recommit to the principle of Target Zero by supporting the traffic safety measures that you heard about today. And I want to thank Representative Julie Reed for introducing an update to the Cooper-Jones Act, and I'm happy to support that. This lowers the barrier for law enforcement to refer a driver to the Department of Licensing for further examination after an accident like this. This bill would bring the Cooper-Jones Act into alignment with existing vehicular assault law, and it's just a common sense update. We have to ask ourselves after an incident like this if a driver should still be on the road. Michael Weiler and Cooper-Jones are part of a tragic legacy over 20 years apart, but it is within our reach to end that legacy this session, and we need to. Thank you.
We've reserved another half hour for your questions. So Governor, if you want to join us up here, I know we also have Chief Batiste, Secretary Millar, Director of our Washington Traffic Safety Commission, a lot of others. So we've got some experts who can answer our press questions. Who wants to go first? Yeah.
Senator Lewis, David from the Seattle Times. You mentioned that Washington has seen the fastest growth over the last year. I mean, we saw nationwide sort of almost leveling off and even a little bit of a decrease in traffic deaths. What's different about Washington? Why is it still going up? And then on the bipartisan issue, if you can't find full bipartisanship on some issues that you think are important, would you push forward with those anyways with just Democratic votes?
On the first question, I definitely want to invite Shelley Baldwin as well from the Traffic Safety Commission. We don't completely understand the full magnitude of what's happening in Washington because the data is still coming in, but it's clear, as the governor and Trooper Lovick has said, that impaired driving continues to be a significant challenge. We also know distracted driving and excessive speed are challenges that are contributing to this. But Shelley and her agency, they work on these numbers, they work on the details, and I would invite Shelley to share some comments.
Yeah, I think one of the things that changed, thank you. I think one of the things that changed throughout COVID is speed. We've done some surveys of speed and have found speeds to be very excessive everywhere in Washington. What we can do to bring down speeds, well, why does speed matter? Because it's all about kinetic energy, right? So people don't always think about what the speed limit is or following it, but they need to. And we hope to be running some programs to try to bring that speed down, such as automated enforcement.
And with respect to bipartisanship, we begin with the principle that we're going to do this together, and we'll continue on that principle. I would be shocked if we didn't get bipartisan support for the full measure of bills that we bring forward. So we're not planning for partisan outcomes. We're planning to do this work together. I think Senator King, Representative Barkas, I see Senator Wilson here from the Republican caucus. I'm sure there's others I'm missing, but we are committed to this, and we're not going to let politics get in the way of this. We'll get this done. Drew?
Senator Lovick, we didn't talk about the right on red bill.
Absolutely.
We would eliminate that at school areas. I imagine that might get some pushback. Does that have the kind of support? Explain why we need to take what a lot of people enjoy, being able to take a right on.
You know, it might have a little pushback, but I always like to quote James Baldwin when he said that Not everything's that thing that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed without being faced. This is an opportunity for us to really look and see. I see intersections. I find myself just obsessed with people making right turns on the red light. So what I do is I find myself standing there just to see what they do. And if you watch a person, they'll turn their head to the left and keep their head to the left and keep their head to the left and drift out into the lane. We're going to give some opportunities for communities to make that decision. And there's always pushback, but pushback doesn't mean that we can't try it. So that's the goal of the legislation. Thank you.
Just to follow up for Senator King, you mentioned that Republicans have a tough time supporting safety cameras. Will Republicans have full support of this bill?
Well, I can't speak for every Republican in my caucus, but I think you will see a large number of my fellow Republican senators supporting this legislation. We realize that we have to take drastic steps. When you have attended the meetings like we have, and every meeting starts with the contractors that are there telling you of the near misses, and even worse, the actual employer or employee being struck, the things that we hear. I mean, this is what we started with every meeting we had. And there was not one meeting over, since we started in April, there wasn't one meeting that we didn't have a story of either a near miss or somebody actually being hit. I mean, that's how often this happens. We realize we got to take drastic steps and do something that's going to change the dynamic in these work areas. And I'm willing to do that. I firmly believe that the majority of my caucus is willing to do that. So we'll see whether we can be unanimous in that decision or not. I truly can't answer that. Thank you, though.
Mr. Chairman, can I just touch on one thing? I just want to touch on one thing the governor mentioned, and he has really been very supportive and to the point of almost really encouraging us to do this. We need more officers on our streets. And so what I'm doing and what we are doing is we're looking at regional campuses. We have a location in Pasco. I've gone up and found a location in Skagit Valley College. Someone called me today about a location at Edmonds College. It's the Central Washington branch. And we're also looking at one down in Clark County. That is going to give us the opportunity to get more police officers on our streets, because for every officer we train at a regional location, that's an extra officer they can train down in Berrien. And I believe that's going to make a huge difference in our communities, because I'm just a huge fan of traffic enforcement, because I believe when people see us enforcing the smaller laws, they're going to know we're serious about the bigger things. When we're stopping people for speeding, 10, 15, 20 over, when we're stopping them for that, they're going to know that we're serious about other crimes. And it's going to make a huge difference. And I want to thank the governor for his absolute encouragement and his support on regional campuses.
Can I say something?
Of course.
I get excited about this. Speed kills, big time. And the reason speed kills is the energy that your car has is not linear. When you go twice as fast, you don't have twice as much energy that could kill somebody. It goes up to a factor of 4, I believe. It's an exponential increase. And this is why it's so important. What is survivable at 25 in an interaction between a car and a pedestrian, potentially survivable at 25, is fatal at 35 or 40. And this is something maybe we don't realize because we don't always think about physics. But speed kills, and it is killing more people now. And that's why this issue of having more police officers to help enforce our speed limits that are reasonable is absolutely critical. And I am committed to this, and I think the legislator is committed to get more people out there to help us have reasonable speeds. I've now exhausted my physics lesson for the day, by the way.
Will there be charts? Ryan.
Follow up on speeds. Troopers can't be everywhere. Move Red Washington dramatically expanded the number of places that automatic speed cameras can be added, but it kind of lets cities and counties take the lead. But 40% of serious injuries and fatalities are happening on state highways. Should the state take a more active role like they might with highway safety cameras in terms of overall automatic speed cameras?
Well, I will say we are in the phase where we are not saying no to any ideas. We are looking at everything. And we haven't mentioned young driver safety bill, older driver safety bill that we've got. We haven't mentioned the tow truck work, safety work that Senator Wilson is leading and Representative Barkas in the House. We're looking under every rock and every nook and cranny for ideas that will help save Washingtonians. Now, in terms of state highways, we want Secretary Millar to get those work zones secured first. But then let's take a look, particularly in conjunction with our local partners that co-manage state highways to get all the mechanisms out there. Obviously, a trooper or a local police officer is the best enforcement, but where we can't cover everything, we want to look at these automated tools. And I also want to emphasize none of these bills are easy or simple. Everything we're asking in this package is going to make all of us change our behavior. And none of us like to change our behavior. So to get from 745 to target zero, we're not going to do it with words and happy measures. It's going to take some behavior change on all of us. And I love turning right on a free right on a red just as much as the next guy. But if it's putting people in danger, you know, I need to balance my leisure with public safety. And the other piece on that is I was reading it came to us in the 1970s. Sometimes we think these laws have been around since Moses, but they haven't. And we can change the way we're going by looking at facts and evidence and data. And Ryan, I appreciate this idea. I think Secretary Millar was taking notes. We will examine it and see if it's something that we should include in the package moving forward.
Does the state have any authority over vehicle design, which makes me think about big puffed up trucks and SUVs that might have something to do with the pedestrian deaths?
Great question. We don't have exclusive authority over vehicle design. We share a lot of that with the federal government, but we are looking where we can in this space. One idea we're going to look at in the budget is to get our state fleets using some of the more advanced technology. There's speed inhibiting technology now, where if the car is going over the speed limit, it starts to correct that. I think the state fleet is a great place to pilot some of those technologies. We see other jurisdictions doing that around the country. So if we can't mandate, we can lead. And we're in close communication with the National Transportation Safety Board as they're working on these issues. In the bipartisan infrastructure law, there's a provision to get impairment detection technology in the national fleet in the middle of this decade. We're supportive of everything to change the design of our automobiles. We also need to look at these gigantic vehicles. Professor Inslee talked about the speed and the mass. If the truck weighs 2 times as much as it did 10 years ago, that equation becomes even worse. So we need to look at all of these. Again, we need to balance our comfort as drivers with the very real impacts it's having on the community. Yes.
If I could add, I'd have you look for a bill that's going to be coming out from Representative Rammel that has some provisions in it that make sure that drivers, when they purchase particularly larger vehicles, that they understand what the consequences of what the weight and the force of that vehicle is. So look in the next week or so for a bill from Representative Rammel on that.
Senator King.
Well, 2 things I'd like to add. Speed does kill. I'm not exactly known for being the slowest guy on the road, but I drive back and forth to Yakima almost every weekend. And I can tell you that I'm doing the speed limit. We'll leave it at that. But we try to keep that under, you know, some reasonable conditions there. But I can tell you from experience, in the last 6 months, I have cars going by me like I'm standing still. And it isn't just 1 or 2. I mean, I can alliterate or tell you about 2 weeks ago. I saw cars behind me. They were a half mile behind me. And within seconds, 3 cars went by me. I don't know what they were doing, but it was amazing. And then I had a 4th car that was going by me faster than those and weaving at it. Those are the things we got to stop. We have to have troopers to do it. My other pet peeve are the tires that stick out beyond the body of the vehicle. We have laws that says that's illegal. We need troopers to enforce that. We got to have more of them because, you know, is that a safety issue? I say yes, it is. We also have a bill that has to do with the tinting of windows so that if you can see the driver, you can, maybe if you're behind them, you know what they're going to do. When the window is so dark you can't see anybody, that causes a safety issue as well. So I think we have a variety of things to look at it and a way to address some of these, some more minor than others, but some that are truly more important. So thank you.
Jerry?
Also been introduced to, I guess, legalize jaywalking, for lack of a better term. I imagine that doesn't have the support of this room, or what are your thoughts on that?
We are applying a safety lens to everything. There are clearly racial disproportionalities involved in the enforcement of some of the laws in the traffic safety space, so we can't stop talking about equity while we're talking about safety. We can do both, but we will be using a safety lens as we evaluate all bills this session. And I know that Governor Inslee, as he decides which ones to sign, is also committed to using a safety lens as well. So we've got a couple of system checks here to make sure that whatever we pass improves safety this session. Not to put words in your mouth, Governor Inslee.
13. Can we expand a little bit more on the proposals about old drivers and young drivers and what the safety goal is there?
Yeah, and we are introducing that legislation in the coming days. I'll say broadly speaking, for younger drivers, at age 18, our requirement for driver's ed ends, and you can sit for the exam without training. The data shows that our 18 to 25-year-olds, unfortunately, are our most dangerous cohort of drivers on the road, and we know that driver's ed cuts serious crashes and fatalities by about 50%. So we're going to ask drivers under the age of 25 to make sure they have that training before they get their license. Older drivers, it's a sort of mix of things, particularly encouraging folks who may be ready to surrender their license because that's time, getting them a free ID. Also looking at the interval of how often older drivers come back in. We've allowed our drivers to come in every 8 years. We think for our older cohorts, we probably want to check in more frequently than that. So the details of that bill are forthcoming. We'll get those to you, but we're going to be looking, like I said, at every idea we can. Representative Fye, am I missing something on younger or older drivers? I know the House is working on these topics as well.
I would just add that they used to think, the research used to show that it had to do with the age of the driver. And the great work by the Traffic Safety Commission kind of debunked that. And it really is more a function of whether you've gone through driver's training or not. A big difference. And we got to make that available and ubiquitous and provide for assistance for families that don't have the $700 to pay for driver's training. It's got to be more universal. It's got to be affordable. And I think that will be one of the bigger drivers, so to speak, in terms of being able to address these issues. So, thank you.
I really appreciate this emphasis on education. A bit personally, my father-in-law, Robert Tyndall, was the first legislator to propose, he wasn't a legislator when he ran for the legislature, to propose mandatory driver's education in 1964. He ran as a Republican in North Seattle. He was not elected, but it's a particular joy. His Democratic opponent accused him of being a socialist or something, so it was an interesting race. But I think it's a particular joy. I mentioned this. It's a joy to have such bipartisanship working on this. My father-in-law was a great Republican. We got some great Republican leaders here, and I think we're going to have some great bipartisan bill signings. I'll invite you all. Be safe. Thanks.
Jerry, did you?
I just want to ask about money. You're passing a lot of bills, a lot of laws, a lot of new rules, and the public trouble keeping track of it. But in the end, if you need a sidewalk, you need a stoplight, it costs money. The Democrats pushed through a $17 billion plan not long ago. It only spent money in really the first 18 to 24 months. So now, given what you said, where is traffic safety and transportation system safety in the priority list of how you spend about $15 billion over the next 16 years? Does it move ahead of any highway projects, culverts, anything like that?
I think we can do all of the above, but we are going to make safety a priority this session. Move ahead includes a complete streets mandate for the State Department of Transportation to build safe systems as they're doing their work. We boosted funding for local governments to add this. We know, though, to build sidewalks in every neighborhood, and I appreciate Representative Mena reminding us, I have unincorporated terrain as well, that there's a lot of our communities that have none of this, and to get to them is going to take a generation, and we can't wait a generation to see these numbers go down. So we're going to focus on behavior change this year, and we're going to continue to push investments into active transportation and safety around the state. And I do just want to emphasize, that our work to spend the dollars and move ahead is a bipartisan effort. While we may not have agreed on what got us to this place, we are in agreement on how we're going to move forward. And Senator King and Representative Barkas are working closely with Representative Fye and I in deciding how we allocate these resources. And we're going to make sure that safety remains a top priority. But we also have to do other things in the system as well, and we'll do all that together.
And tied to that, there's a huge push on the housing front to build housing. Are you going to require that all new housing developments provide the infrastructure that includes sidewalks, stop signs, crosswalks, all of those things paid for upfront so that communities don't need to come back to their cities and counties later and say, we need it?
Yeah, we have our housing expert here, Representative Barkas, who's been leading the conversation on housing supply for the last couple sessions, and I think I'll let him speak to how we're ensuring that as we build housing, we're doing it safely.
Thank you, Senator. Most of that already, in any new development that's been put forth, that is already occurring where they're putting in the infrastructure. Now, sometimes you hear me say the sidewalk to nowhere because it doesn't connect. There's interconnectedness between the neighborhoods. So I have the 2nd District, and anybody that's been out in rural Pierce County knows, Representative Mena, we have a shared district and we have the same issues. But most new developments, when they're put in, have those requirements. It is a topic of conversation when it comes to impact fees and how they're paid for and how that's transferred on. But I'm sure that as we look at it, as we've said before, you cannot separate the nexus between transportation and housing.
One follow-up for Trooper Lovett. Can we bring you back on the right turn on red question? Can you explain a little bit what kinds of crashes you would be stopping if you...
I think a lot of car pedestrian collisions, car bicycle collisions. And you know what I always tell people when to maybe follow up on the question, people hate change and they hate the way things are. And I wasn't saying that to try and get a laugh, but that's the change that people are gonna hate. But they also hate the fact that people are cutting them off and running them down at intersections. So we're hoping to reduce a lot of the car pedestrian collisions, car bicycle collisions, things like that.
Can you give us an update on where you stand in terms of how many deputy or troopers you have, as well as just when I was just driving here from Seattle, I must have saw 10 cruisers pulling over people for speed emphasis, and I want to know if there were more troopers, would you make more of a speed emphasis on state highways?
Thank you for the question. The answer is yes. We're concentrating on what we call high emphasis patrols now. Where we work along local law enforcement agencies. It's high visibility enforcement efforts. And I want to thank Shelley Baldwin and the folks at Traffic Safety for helping us sponsor that. We're getting funding support from them. We're about 249 troopers as of today short. That's from me on down. So we've been working very feverishly to hire and replace. The disturbing part is our applicant numbers are down, and that's true with all of law enforcement. So we're doing everything we can to educate and emphasize people's ability to come and join a great agency and give back in the highest way that they possibly can, and that's saving lives. Very important. Couldn't happen at a more critical time.
Just quick follow-up, is the $15,000 lateral bonus enough, given that all the other counties are doing the same?
I hope they give us a chance to see. Yeah, we want to see that. We'll put it out there. I think I've already gotten through word of mouth that there are a lot of folks who are interested in joining the organization, not only from within the state, but from out of state as well. I've had others steal from me. Payback is coming. Yes.
One issue we've heard is with the toxicology lab and getting blood alcohol tests back to courthouses. I'm wondering if you can speak to that issue, and any legislators present can talk about what it'll take to clear that up.
Sure. Like all things during the pandemic, we've suffered a setback with regards to a backlog. And that's because we're short on staffing and because we had to make some changes within the workplace to keep people safe. We anticipate having that backlog cleared up about July of this year with the continued work of the folks. We also had need for additional space. We didn't have enough bench space for lab folks to work in the small lab that we're in Seattle. So we recently, with the support of the legislative body, obtained property in Federal Way, and we're going to be moving half of our staff to that site in Federal Way, which will give us more time to deal with that backlog. Yes. I do want to say to Amber and David, thank you so much. It's good to see you again. Your message is very important, as I told you in Parkland. I can't thank you enough for sharing your voice. When I get up here, people expect me to say certain things, but when you get up here and you share your heart, it's moving. It means a lot. It also touches my troopers. It helps them realize their why. And their why is why did they hire on to do this job? They hired on to protect and serve. And so with the few troopers that are out there, I guarantee you they're working very hard. They're tired, and they're waiting for backup. And so I want to thank this body for doing all that we can to ensure that we get them the backup that they're so deservingly need. Law enforcement as a whole in this state is way down in terms of numbers. You look at us per capita in comparison to other states, we're down, we're the lowest. So in order to affect change, you need good laws, but you need good education to go along with that and the ability to enforce those laws. So I can't thank you enough. Einstein says you can't expect change by doing the same thing over and over again. These laws that you're passing, as we did dating back to when we really whittled away at those fatality numbers, we changed it by putting good laws on the books and going out and having troopers and local law enforcement enforce those laws. So I appreciate you for the changes that you're bringing forward. It's going to help us make people safer. We also need the help of the public. We can't arrest our way out of any situation, nor is that our desire. We need people who are actually driving in a reckless disregard for themselves and others to get it together and drive safely. You're making the roadways unsafe for all of us. So drive safely and responsibly. That's your big help to us in helping us keep you safe. Thank you.
We're getting to the end, but I see Billy Wallace, one of our great partners.
Thank you, Senator. This is more of a thank you. I hoped this would get to this place. I want to thank everybody that's thrown their weight in behind this. It started with 2 phone calls to you and to Senator King, and this thing has snowballed, and I want to thank you, Representative Marcus, Representative Fye, Roger, you've been an awesome governor, throwing your weight behind this. I couldn't imagine it getting to this point so quickly. I mean, since we started in April on this, it has been amazing how fast we've made changes. Wise God has been there for us. I just want to say thank you to all of you for putting your weight behind this. Appreciate it. Senator Loving, you too, my friend.
And Billy has taken his orange vest off, but he represents the laborers of Washington. A lot of his members are here with us. Yeah.
I had a more technical question. I've heard mixed messaging in terms of THC and mixed substances, how the .05 limit will apply to substances beside alcohol.
That's a good question. We'll need to follow up and work through that. I think Senator Lovick's office can help you track down the more detailed information there, and we'll work with the patrol and others to sort through that particular question. I think with that, we are so grateful that you're here, you joined us, and we're going to get some good work done and send a stack of bills to the governor to sign.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Thanks for allowing us.
It's a pleasure.